County. You're back.
In the absence of any specific, excuse me, knowledge or request of information here, I just kind of put together this table outlining what's currently being undertaken. Apologize if you can't see that, but basically what you have is the hunt areas. We're looking at 6, 7, and 10, and then the number of callers in each area. In Area 6, we currently have 5 callers. They're all satellite callers. The objectives are to learn migration corridors in areas that have some impacts from mining, and also examine deer use of burned areas with some of the historic fires in southern portions of Area 6, trying to learn how that affects those deer and their movement and distribution. Some of the findings, we've been able to determine the corridors in and around some of those mining impacts and winter use areas. One interesting observation was that in 2010, I don't know if that's 9 and 8 or not 10 and I guess that's 10 and 9. We had deer 20 miles further north in 2010 than we did in this would be 09-10 versus 08-9. So we had deer 20 miles further north in the winter of 09-10 than we did in 08-9 as a result of less harsh winter. And because they were able to winter 20 miles north, they had much better forage, and Area 6 had huge fawn ratios last year, at least 10 fawns higher than the next highest area. So also, you know, learning some of those corridors where those deer are moving in and around some of these pits and waste rock dumps and heap leach pads is pretty important to try to maintain those corridors. Some of these collars are purchased by Newmont and Barrick to facilitate our understanding of these corridors. In Area 7, 24 collars out, 19 of them are satellite collars, 5 of them are GPS store on board, and those store on board collars, the satellite collars are in communication with satellites. We download that. It's almost real-time data, but there's an interval that they download that data when the collar has a clear vision to the satellite. So we can download that data, see where those animals are, depending on how we program that collar. And then the store on boards gets the same data, but the collar's the data is all stored in the collar, and then it has a mechanism on there that at a certain date opens up and drops off, and it has a VHF transmitter on there as well. We go out and we locate that on the ground, bring the collar back in, plug it into the computer, and download the data and get the. So there's 24 collars in Area 7, 19 of them are satellite, 5 are GPS store on board. The objectives here have been to evaluate deer use of crossing structures on Highway 93, where we've got 1 overpass and 3 underpasses right now, with more under construction, and then to also delineate Area 7 from Area 10 deer on the winter range. Some of the deer from Area 7 that cross 93 and then eventually cross to the south in the Pequops go down to the border between 078 to the north and 105 to the south, where the Hogan Tunnel is, and there's some intermingling, or even though 7 deer are wintering in 10, we wanted to use some of these collars to determine where 7 deer ended and 10 began, so that we weren't trying to include 7 deer in a 10 survey or vice versa. We've learned that the length of migration for some of these deer is in excess of 100 miles. There's incredibly high site fidelity for fawning areas. These does are returning to the exact same aspen patch year after year. Migratory corridor width, which is pretty important, because then you know how much of it, if you can protect a corridor, it's a small swath, you can get a bigger bang for your buck than the whole area. Use of proposed mine site. Frontier Gold is proposing, I guess it's more than proposed, is beginning a large mine in the South Pequops in 078, just south of I-80. Being able to learn where the deer move through that area before the mine is in place might help protect some of those corridors. Seasonal habitat use has also been refined. learned that the migratory path to versus from wintering areas isn't always the same. In some of these areas, 7 deer, when they're heading either east or south in the fall, will choose a different route when they're coming north and west back. So just saving one corridor might not be adequate. You might need to save 2 to accommodate movement both directions. In Area 10, we have approximately 8 collars out, 7 satellite, and 1 GPS store on board. The objectives there have been to learn migration corridors and seasonal habitat use patterns, and we've been successful to that end so far, which is a total of 37 collars in Elko County right now. One of the objectives that we have for the future is to begin to measure survival. We have survival values in our models based on knowledge, but it would be probably prudent for us to measure those values directly, put some significant numbers of VHF collars just because they're a lot more affordable option, monitor them on a regular basis to determine overwinter mortality of fawns and does. So that's something that we'll be doing in the future.
Question for you. In Area 7 stuff, when the collaring of those animals, when did that occur?
There's been a number of different episodes. Those collars, some of them are deployed at different times and they'll die at different times. Right now there's 24 out there. Most recently, I think it may have been October, because it was during hunting season that there were, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something collared, maybe more in the...
And how were they collected during hunting season? What was the method?
Helicopter.
I've heard a little bit about that, and that practice during hunting season of chasing deer with helicopters does not seem to be a very good public relations practice, if you'd like to put it that
I can
way.
certainly see how, you've got a $3.1 million structure and several other structures adjacent to it. The Department of Transportation wants to engineer more. However, they won't do that in the absence of data demonstrating that they work. So to put 6 collars on deer, half hour, 45 minutes in an area with low hunter density, in an area that we can be relatively certain that those deer are in proximity, close enough proximity to those structures to use them, I think it becomes a cost-benefit analysis, especially the collar cost, the capture cost, and the long-term survivability of that herd to maintain those corridors.
Excellent. As far as the monetary costs, about what do we figure it costs to use helicopter, capture an animal, and get a collar on him? And we have
It depends on the
rough
type
numbers?
of the collar, but for a satellite collar, you can pretty much figure $5,000 per animal. The collar itself is $3,500. Capture costs are about $650 per animal, but it depends on how many you capture, because there's about a $15,000 ferry cost in addition to that, and then you've got an hourly stick charge as well. And then you've got data download costs, which are about $53 a month per collar for the life of the collar, which is probably maximum 18 months depending on the program duty cycle.
And the next question's probably already been answered, but it's been thrown out there as, why are we spending that much money when trail cameras are next to free and they're going right through a structure that would be easily photographed by trail cameras?
We have about 50 trail cameras out there on every single one of those structures on both sides.
So why is the other necessary as well?
Well, I think you're getting different data. If you just want to document that they're crossing, then trail cameras are great. But if you want to see where they're coming from, where they're going to, and are they hitting that fence and going up and down the fence for a long time, or are they going right to it and going over? Are they hitting the fence and then going back into the snakes for a week and then trying again and going back into the snakes for a week? Trail cam wouldn't tell you any of that.
Questions?
Tony, I had numerous complaints from sportsmen about helicopters flying during the deer season when they were trying to hunt. And I think that, hunters are our customers, and I think that to the extent possible, regardless of what you need to do, we should always take into sportsmen, because if you're out there in either a guided hunt or a non-guided hunt, sportsmen are complaining that they're out there hunting and there's helicopters flying around, so that's not a good idea. And to the extent possible, I mean, there might be an emergency where you got to do it, but you should really plan, if you can, when it's not in hunting season. 'Cause I heard some complaints on that. And the other thing is, and you're still getting road kills on there with these overpasses also. But you know, we're spending this information to find out their migration after we built these multi-million-dollar overpasses. We should have did this before, shouldn't we?
It was done before. We have significant data, and that's why they were put where they're put. A lot of this monitoring that's going on right now, the Department of Transportation has provided the university a $150,000 grant to assess a lot of this, and I don't know that all those collars weren't paid for by Department of Transportation, but I want to verify that before I say that. But I believe at least a portion of them were paid for by the Department of Transportation. Getting back to Chairman Rain's question. It was done before, and it's being done now to document their usage. The Department of Transportation has a lot of people saying, we want proof that they work, so they can engineer more and do more for the deer. Pequop is a prime example. If you get them across 93 only to get hit on the Pequops, then you're not spending your money wisely.
But the underpass and overpasses, they're already programmed where they're going to go.
Yeah, based on previous
Right.
caller data, yeah.
And so I don't understand that. And so you're still monitoring to see if they're
For
gonna work?
additional structures.
Okay. But it doesn't make sense to try to monitor where the deer are going to migrate now, which is what you stated, when the overpasses are already built.
Well, we have some other areas where there's significant crossings and there aren't structures. So
Yeah,
some
like
of the same
I-80,
deer-
you got a
yeah,
big
right.
I-80, that's going to be a big migration. Thank you.
Questions? All right, and seeing no further questions on this, thank you very much, Mr. Wasley, very informative.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
We'd like to have a 5-minute break, and we'll come back to 21.